So I will only talk about the ideas, the relationship between the theories and the way how we've been developing the theory in UN Studio with the work. And I was seeing how much time I have left. Within an hour, I'd like to maybe try to talk about two major projects and a few smaller projects. As you know, UN Studio is not a company. What is a company of my own. I work closely together with my partner Caroline Bos, who is an art historian. We recently have more parties within the company, so we become this united network of architecture, you could say history, architectural history, and art history, where we combine these topics in the architecture, infrastructure and urbanism. Practice was too linearly organized. That architects were much thinking in the relationship between the way how they would develop a sketch and give it over to the project leader and to the draftsman, etc. But while we were working on more complex projects, so projects whereby there were sometimes even 4 clients involved, we discovered that it was not so easy to develop a linear process anymore. So what we did, we developed an organization whereby the members of the studio became more specialists. So we worked according to a group of specialists, according to particular tasks within the project, and this is how we bring our network of knowledge together, and this is what we do, of course, very closely with the client as well. You might know that, let's say, a client 10 years ago would come to you and would give you from one day to the other day the project, and even without a specialist behind it. But today, specialists become also more. They are more closer related to the client. So the client often, when you have a larger project, is already often sitting with people on the table. And this relationship, what you need to build with your client, is not only so that you have one person who you talk to, but a more complicated network. I sometimes like to compare myself to John Cage, whereby, as you maybe have known or know, that John Cage walks among the members of the orchestra and is not standing in front of the orchestra anymore. He believes very much that you need to inspire the network of the orchestra. You don't have to really be hierarchically in front of it. You need to locally talk to the people in the network and inspire them. And that is how I see the contemporary architect. I do believe that the contemporary architect is much more, call it a public scientist, a networker, a member of ideas, and who designs alone, but knows where to deal and how to deal with the public forces. So this is UN Studio's space. You might like to come there one day, but it might be also so that we are maybe not there, because we have so many projects right now outside Holland that you might have groups who be in different countries, and the next day everyone might be there. So we move our people sometimes for a short time towards another place. Again, work in workshops and work with a local office in another country, for instance. And then from there we work on our project. I briefly would like to introduce some of our earlier work. This is a bridge we did for the city of Rotterdam. Can I ask you to dim the light on me a little bit? I mean, I know you see me, but I prefer to show the... so this bridge was a lucky project, because I had only for 1 year in the office, I had only 5 members in the company, and we were winning this internal competition for the city of Rotterdam to do this bridge. It is a bridge that links the old center with the Kop van Zuid. It's a new development area, and the bridge is really a new public link between the old part and the new part of the city. And the reason why I also show this project, because this project became an icon. But remember, an icon was not designed by us. I think you cannot design icons. I would like to clarify that, maybe prove it also during my talk, that is impossible. Icons cannot be designed. Icons can only be grown in time. They need to be recognized. Icons need to be taken over by the public. This project, of course, is for project, but it is in a way not for project anymore. Every day, 60,000 people move over the bridge. It is being used, luckily enough, by the city constantly, not only by physical use, but also image-wise. But it is being taken over by the public. It is not so that we developed an intention to make this bridge an icon. It was in the brief. So there was a question of the city developer and the politicians to make a recognizable sign for the city. But as I said, it is impossible to know when a sign becomes an icon. I'd like to tell you a very short story about the way how we developed the project. We came to this angled form simply because we spread out the cables all over the island from the top to the lower part. And by spreading the cables, we discovered that there was so much bending force going from the middle to one side to the other side of the pylon of this bridge, that we turned the bending force to the back of the pylon. So that's why you have this bending form on the left hand, on the right hand side, where you see it towards the other movement of the forces of the cables. This bridge was particularly chosen also because we had a very good contractor on the site, connected to the steel engineers we work with. The manufacturer and the builder said to us all the time, well, I can do it for 20 million lower in euros. In that time it was even 40 in guilders. But he never told us how. But then one day he said, I will do it with my grain, and we never knew about the grain, but he brought this unbelievable grain from the Chinese sea that could lift up the pylon from its flat surface onto its horizontal part of the pylon in its vertical stand. And you have to imagine, I have to point these are the people waiting there to montage the pylon. So you can imagine what this height of this pylon is, roughly around 140 meters high. So you can imagine what the height is of this crane. This was his secret. He could do this lifting on the horizontal feet of this pylon in one day, whereas any other contractor would have to build each piece by piece in 5 months' time on top of each other. So, what the introduction is here, the icon, but also techniques. You have to have contemporary techniques to work with. When we worked on this project in 1991, 1992, we developed also a 3D modeling system. And in that time, AutoCAD was just on the market. There was no 3D Studio or Rhino or whatever around. So we developed a special technique to work with the engineers. They used the OR drawings towards the engineering drawings, and the drawings from the engineers were used for the cutting of the steel. What was at that time really unusual, to cut all the steel by CNC techniques. One of these earlier projects is this museum we did in the south of Holland.